All right, and we are live again, folks. How y'all doing? Welcome back. We are back for our third debate of the. I count. I went to school. You know what I'm saying? All right. Anyway, we got for our third debate of the night. We got Fabian Liberty versus Pentuple, and we're going to be arguing over whether or not Trump is socialist. I think the exact question is Trump the biggest socialist president of our lifetime? I guess we're assuming our lifetime here at the table, not your grandma who survived FDR. So we're going to see who's the most socialist. I want to clarify that before we begin because I know we have some viewers that are older than fun. Anyway, moving forward. Who is going to be taking the affirmative? If he's the most socialist, that would be you would be the affirmative. Yes. So I'm going to give you 7 minutes over, and then you'll go after that. I guess Grid will know this. We're going to do the same thing as last time. At the end, I think we'll do 5 to 10 minute closings. You'll have an hour and a half, and then we're going to do the closings, and then we will have audience questions. So that is the setup. Any questions for me, guys?
Now, how can they pay?
That is the most important question. Is you pay Grid? However, he's got it set up on his channel. That you get the links. They didn't give you this information, but y'all have all been here before. So give him money, please. Money now, give it to him. He spent a lot of money setting this up, and it's a good event. We are real excited about it. DebateCon tickets, by the way, guys, if you didn't know, are fucking pricey. I fucking spent a grip to go, and I missed the whole first day. So I'm just saying, you guys need to spend money on Grid right now because he has offered up a DebateCon quality event minus my terrible bullshit. And that's been fantastic overall. It's only going to get better, I think. So make sure you give him your money. This studio wasn't cheap. It's nice. They got motorcycles more expensive than most y'all's shitty ass rent control apartments in California. But anyway, let's go on and get to the debate. Here we go. Fabian, kick us off. You have time starting whenever you start talking.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Grid, for the event. Thank you, the viewers that are watching. It's been a fun experience. With some of this we kind of just threw together, and we're gonna have a blast, man. So let me get started on my opening statement. In 1934, just 1 year before America's greatest economic failure, the Social Security Act, America was in a socialist-caused economic crisis. When it comes to home ownership, one might call it an affordability crisis. But our great president, FDR, had another one of his great socialist ideas. Instead of allowing malinvestments to fail, reducing tariffs to stimulate trade, or trying to curtail inflation, as had worked for decades previously, FDR established the 30-year mortgage and FHA. FDR decided to destroy the concept of savings and subsidize long-term debt. The banks could now lend, in part, from government-backed risk. As well as laying the foundations for economic busts, asset inflation, record bank profits, weakened savings, weakened underwriting, destruction of sound mortgages, fixed inflation of the U.S. economy, and the creation of real estate investment to create a permanent rentier class. Donald Trump is watching the disaster of FDR continuously unfold in front of him. And what's his response? To proclaim FDR as one of the greatest presidents and suggest that he can fix the economy with tariffs and a 50-year mortgage. The 50-year mortgage is just a perfect example of Trump's brazen socialist attitude to the U.S. economy. Trump doesn't just idolize socialists, though. He governs as one, albeit with a veneer of nationalism. Trump's agenda has been the most anti-capitalist and fiscally liberal of any recent president. Trump is imposing blanket tariffs sold with lies as a mean to secure better trade deals when in reality the only rhyme and reason is enrichment of donors and empty, maniacal rhetoric. A 107% tariff on Italian pasta helps no one in America, except maybe the North American Millers Association and 8th Avenue Food and Provisions, also known as Treehouse Foods, who produce bleached, folic acid enriched and glyphosate infused pasta too unhealthy to be legal in Europe. But it's not enough that Trump is taxing Americans to death or idolizes socialists, so let's name just a few more. Steel tariffs, farm subsidies in 2017 from $4 billion to in 2020, $32 billion, COVID stimulus worth $5 trillion, PPP loans that were oh so popular, Operation Warp Speed, the greatest vaccine, guys. CHIPS Act, 10% nationalization of Intel and other companies, export taxes specifically on AMD and NVIDIA, bullying them, 15% tax on any trade with China. The golden share as the U.S. gains control over Nippon Steel with the merger of U.S. Steel. threatening price controls on Walmart and Amazon to the point that Walmart CEO just stepped down today. $3.1 trillion deficit in 2020, an increased debt limit with the big beautiful bill, cronyisms and subsidies for everybody. Given this, how can you call yourself a capitalist and support the most socialist president in your lifetime?
All right, real quick before you go up in Temple, point of order. There was a chat from Mrs. Dill. I think she said, God bless. Shout out to the crew in Nashville. Stay safe. God bless. Thank you so much for the super chat. We appreciate it. Fantastic. I wanted to go one other thing. If we get super chats, I will interrupt y'all to stop and read them.
We also got a raid.
And we got a raid.
Cool Vic. Thank you, Cool Vic.
Thank you so much, Cool
Thanks,
Vic.
Cool Vic.
We appreciate the raid and the super chat. Y'all are fantastic. We appreciate. We're doing a special event down here in Nashville for DebateCon live in person. We're doing the sideshow, I guess, is what we're doing. It's a good sideshow. It's the best sideshow. Frankly, no one does a better sideshow. Anyway, so that's going to be what's going on here. Make sure you donate. If they do a donate, I will stop and read that out. And as always, y'all both know my moderator style, so not too worried. Go ahead, Pentuple. You got 7 minutes. All right. When you start speaking, go ahead.
Well, I probably won't use all of it, but the prompt for us is whether Trump is the most socialist president of our lifetime.
Oh, wait. So, I'm so sorry. Both of y'all move your mics close to your mouth. Yeah.
We're too tall.
Especially you.
Yeah, gotcha. I'll talk more directly.
All right, cool. All right, go ahead. Now go ahead and start over.
So we're debating ultimately whether Trump is the most socialist president of our lifetime. So we're talking about Biden, Obama, Bush, Clinton. I would argue he's the least socialist of them. And I would point at the ACA, the Affordable Care Act from Obama, as probably the most socialist legislation we've got in the last 35 years or so that we're looking at. Trump wants to shut down the Department of Education, return that to private markets for education. He shut down USAID. He ended the electric vehicle subsidies. He's wanted to give veterans access outside of the VA to private health care. He's often, criticized for favoring billionaires, which I think comes from his preference that the private market dominate in different industries. So when we're talking about socialism, and I assume we can agree on this definition, that we're talking about the public ownership of the means of production, or just more loosely, government control or intervention over industry. Is that fair to say that's kind of like what we're basing?
I would disagree with your opening.
I guess I'll just open it up with that. I don't really have a prepared opening, but those are some of the things that I would point at that say, Trump's anti-socialist or not operating in a socialist way, where we have, why wouldn't the Affordable Care Act be the most socialist legislation that we've had in our lifetime? And I know.
Well, before you answer, are you done with your opening?
Yeah, my opening.
All right, done with the opening. All right, yeah. As always, I will interrupt y'all sometimes to press both y'all or get clarification. But go ahead and respond to his question. And let's get going.
Yeah. So I mean, if I want to,
wait, I'm so sorry, Fabian. I lied to you. We got another super chat. Cool raid. Cool C raid. $5 Wi-Fi. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Wi-Fi just super chatted $5. Oh yeah. So I'm sorry, we're new to the YouTube. Bear with me. I'm a dumbass. We'll figure it out. Thank you. We appreciate it. Go ahead, Fabian.
Yeah. So if I accept the framing of, which is really just a Stalinist framing of, the state as a transitory state, owning the means of production, I don't accept that framing. We can use that framing for socialism, and I understand definitions are important. So maybe we can have a little back and forth.
What does it mean to be socialist?
What I would say socialism is when the state intervenes in the market to fix the presumed contradictions of capitalism.
Okay.
Right? Like that would be regulations, that would be the ACA, as you mentioned, that would be nationalizing industries. The problem that I have with utilizing your definition is you see so many lefties that are just running from what socialism is. Oh, none of that's real socialism. It's only when the state owns the means of production. And if we go by that definition, then open and shut case, Trump wins because he's the only one that's actually started nationalizing industries, at least in part by owning percentages of Intel and having state command control over the steel industry, having command and control over NVIDIA and AMD, right? Like I want to be even more fair and open it up.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So
before you respond, just would you just say the government existing is socialist?
Well, I mean, that if that's the case, then this is a much harder position to hold, perhaps.
Is that
But
your position?
I mean, like, that would be too simplified, but that would be the closest succinct.
How would you? Okay.
Right. Like,
Well,
I gave my definition. My definition
Yeah.
would be when the state steps in to regulate the
Okay.
economy because of the inherent contradictions in capitalism.
How would you define socialism?
Well, what I looked up before we started this debate is, this is how I would frame it for us.
Right.
The public ownership of the means of production is definitely socialist.
For sure.
And then
without a doubt.
we can expand that for this conversation into government control or intervention in private industry.
Yeah.
And so that's where most of this is going to be talking about.
Yeah.
Right?
I think, like I said, if we go just with pure government control over industry, then I would have to look at like who made Amtrak part. You know what I mean? Like if I don't remember if that was maybe Clinton or something, but other than that, it would without a doubt be Trump, right?
Well,
Like
so-
the most hardcore.
So
in
if we
that
were
aspect.
going back and forth, and I was going to throw up the Affordable Care Act as what I believed was the most socialist legislation in our generation, what would you put forward that Trump has done that is more socialist than that?
I mean, I would say that the tariffs are more socialist. I think that is far more invasive in the economy than the Affordable Care Act. But that doesn't mean I'm a fan of the Affordable Care Act. And to your point, the ACA is probably the most socialist policy that Obama put into place, right?
Well,
I mean, in some ways, he stepped out of the way of the economy with letting fracking was a big thing that he did. Like there are certainly elements of his presidency that were, pro market, pro capitalism.
Right.
But yeah, the ACA has been a disaster. It's anything but affordable, right? As we're seeing now. Yeah.
Right. I would put that to me. I would default to thinking that Obama, because of the Affordable Care Act, was the most socialist president of our lifetime. And maybe we can put that on pause and go through some of these other things. But like ending electric vehicle subsidies, would you say that that's socialist to end it or not socialist to end it?
I mean, it would depend upon the motivation behind it.
It
is true.
It is
on its
objectively
face.
the government
It is
pulling out of
objectively,
that private
yes.
market.
Yeah, I will. It is objectively true that ending any form of subsidy to give money towards a behavior in the economy is less socialist.
All right.
Right? Like that, I agree with you. Trump's relationship with that seemed to be. I mean, and it's hard to know whether or not this is like him being anti-socialist by accident, but he seemed to have this ire against Elon Musk and was proudly proclaiming that he was going to end the EV subsidies and that was some form of punishment to Elon Musk when Elon Musk was talking shit on him for the Epstein files. But at the same time, it also seems like maybe that was the plan before, and the other industries.
Regardless of the motivation,
Why does that difference matter?
Well, I'm saying it matters in the sense that it might be, a state of mind. It is. I already lay out that he is
the reason I'm
objectively anti-socialist.
Well, the reason
in
I'm
that
asking
regard.
that for the chat, if y'all don't know, this guy runs MAGA headquarters. This guy's an avid libertarian,
Mhm.
and so just to clarify for those that are new to any of y'all, the reason I'm asking that is I actually don't know what your position on this is, but I know Lactwood, for example, is an incrementalist, right? When it comes to libertarianism, why would it matter? I mean, maybe you're not an incrementalist. You can explain.
It's in the name. Fabian Liberty is incrementalism.
Sure,
it's tongue in cheek of the Fabian.
Well, right.
Liberty.
Okay. So I guess my question is, why would the motivation matter if it's less socialist? If he does it, even if it's for non-libertarian or non-economic.
I mean, regardless of the motivation,
why would it? Why does
Yeah, I
that
mean,
matter?
if we're doing
Why
a
does the
purely
motivation matter? I'm just
logos
curious.
look at this, right? Like purely logical. I grant you, right, that ending a subsidy, ending regulation, ending control over it is without a doubt removing some element of socialism from the economy, and that is something that I would absolutely praise.
Right. So the reason I bring that up is because I'm coming up with a few things that I believe show Trump as anti-socialist.
Yeah.
So what I want to do is kind of go through these things and determine whether, like, because do we both agree that we're going to have a mixed market system? We're not going to be purely capitalist, right? Or are you anti-socialist?
I would advocate for.
Would you always take
purely,
the anti-socialist position because it's socialism?
Yeah, I would always. I mean, I'm an anarcho-capitalist.
Okay.
Right? I'm always going to be getting rid
Right.
of the state intervention in the economy in every aspect. That being said, I do agree that we have a mixed market economic system.
Right.
That we have elements of socialism and elements of capitalism. And I agree that any president that we bring up is going to have policies that are pro-market, pro-capitalism, except maybe like FDR or Woodrow Wilson, right? And then they're gonna have socialistic elements, right? My argument, just to clean it up, is that it's going to be this is going to be a difficult thing. We're going to have like a conversation about this more than screaming at each other, because what is more socialist, right? Is it
Right.
if I have 10 minor things in the economy that are pro-capitalist, but one insanely large thing that is pro-socialist? Well, then is
Right.
that more socialism or more capitalism?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, I would go through.
Let's go through.
I would go through a lot of these and say that these are actively anti-socialist actions that Trump has taken.
Yeah, for sure.
So, like shutting down the Department of Education, removing the government control.
That was put in by Jimmy Carter. It's been a disaster.
Right.
That is, it's not.
But wouldn't an anti-socialist?
It's not as economically tied as most people would see, but I absolutely agree with you
but
that is.
We're talking about an industry.
Anti-socialist.
We're talking about industry, which would be education. And we're talking about the government control and intervention in that. And public schools are. I don't know how much of the education market that makes up, but I mean, most people I know went to public schools.
Yeah.
So like they have a huge grasp in that, and shutting down the Department of Education is going to put private schools a leg up. Do you agree with that? Because I would say this is a pretty big move, taking the government out of education.
Well, we're taking the federal government out of policies, and we've seen a lot of things such as like Title IX coming from the state, or reclassification of Title IX. We won't say they put it in for that, right? No Child Left Behind from Bush, right? We've had these socialist education initiatives in public school. I don't know how big of an impact it is if there's still education policy going through Congress and they're still being enforced through the executive by other means. I would hope so. I would hope that reduces that to a certain degree. I don't know in the grands where the chips fall, whether or not this really genuinely bolsters private schools or charter schools or Montessori schools, but I would hope so. And that is something that, if Trump actually does it, because he kind of gets blocked on everything that he does. Like if it actually isn't, because right now it's like phasing out. Hopefully it fully goes through. I will give them that. Right.
So what about shutting down USAID? I mean, that's huge government funds. Who knows how many industries that was branching into?
Yeah.
Is shutting that down anti-socialist?
Well,
because I would maybe argue it's not.
He doesn't have the power to fully shut it down. He has the power to pause it.
Well, is it? Am I mistaken that USAID was shut down and the remaining were put to the State Department? That's just
right. The thing is that he doesn't have the power to completely remove funds because Congress owes the purse strings. He can pause USAID and then we can hope that the Republicans put forward some legislation that gets rid of it. But moving that into the State Department, moving those funds into the State Department, as if so, like for example, right? Donald Trump, in his first term, was made a directive. I can't remember the exact order, right, to stop the CIA from funneling guns in the Middle East towards and through the Middle East and through Turkey and other like Eastern European areas, away from designated terrorist organizations. Right. He made that order. And so then they just switched it over to the USS Picatinny through the CIA just switched it over to the State Department. Right. So the State Department getting those funds isn't like the State Department are good boys that aren't going to engage in the same shit as USAID.
Sure.
But I will give you credit to a certain extent if his motivation is sincere.
Well, it's a significant reduction. Is it fair to say it was a significant reduction from what USAID was doing as USAID in that office to what the State Department has taken over? Because certainly the State Department hasn't taken over everything that the USAID was doing. And a lot of those programs did get cut.
Right. We don't know to what degree, like if the funds are going to the State Department, right? Like, and the State Department is still engaging in actions similar to USAID, right? Like funding NGOs. The State Department does that all the time.
Well, we agree that Trump, in principle, was anti-USAID, did not appreciate a lot of the things they were doing, and had his administration railing against it.
I think Trump in principle found out because of Elon Musk and Doge that
Sure, yeah.
people were like, appalled by like
Right.
gender studies being,
Right.
funded in Pakistan for some random ass reason. Do I think that he is like in any way, shape, or form actually like against the State Department machine of influence throughout the
Right.
world? I don't
Well,
buy
sure,
that.
but
Well,
when
yeah,
I think about
let me jump in here because I think this is kind of interesting. I don't know, curious. So when it comes to his foreign policy with the world, it seems like he's very much more pro trade deal. Like when I look at Rwanda and Panama and some of these other ones that he's done recently, as opposed to like a USAID. Would you say trade deals fall into the socialist category, or is trade deals fine between countries?
Well, I think so. There was, I would say
that.
that it falls into the socialist category when it's bolstered by the threats and the coercion of massive tariffs from this big consumption economy. And then, but if he's utilizing it to gain free trade, then that is obviously not a socialist policy.
So
right?
I
It's a
guess,
pro-capitalist
and
policy.
this second. So okay, that was the one. This is the Pentuple. My question is here. So okay. Fabian's put forth that, basically because Trump is a popular. I mean, I'm going to paraphrase Fabian. He can correct me in a minute. I'm sure he will if he doesn't like how I phrased it. But to paraphrase, Trump's a populist. He's pushed a lot of things that are socialist policy. I guess to you've argued with Doge cutting things and cutting the AI. What was it?
USAID.
Yeah, USAID, and then the Affordable Care Act, and Department of Education. You've argued, okay, he may be a popular socialist, but he's cut all these other programs. I guess to you, what is the line of socialism that he would have to cut, or the government spending he have to cut to prove that he's not socialist when he's enacted something like the big beautiful bill, which seems like one of the most socialist arguments on increasing spending. Like, how would you argue the two things in hand?
Well, I don't have an answer for you right now, but I want to, when I'm talking about like this USAID thing, for example, and Trump sort of attacking that, wouldn't a socialist president want to protect that? Wouldn't they like be pro USAID? They would be like pro government intervention, pro government.
Well,
I mean, like
this is the question I'm asking, Pentuple. I guess so. With what Fabian's been pushing, I guess, is basically it's not that Trump's necessarily a socialist himself, right? But if it's the most socialist. I think we could point at any president and say that action was kind of socialist. I guess what I'm asking is, right, so Trump will do something if he thinks it benefits what his agenda is, right? According to most people, I think. And if he thinks expanding something will do it, it seems like the big beautiful bill is evidence that he would expand to be a socialist. And he's socialist in the sense that he's expanding.
Well, I don't know that I agree with your.
Yeah, you don't agree. Okay,
the big beautiful bill.
So I guess my question is, what is the line? What would he like? What is differentiating from, hey, I'm a president that expands the government and makes us more socialist versus cutting? Like, has he done more of that cutting than the expanding? Well, or what indicates that he's going?
We're comparing him to the prior presidents, so like Biden, Obama, Bush, and Clinton.
We'll go back to Bush, I guess, or Clinton maybe.
So like Trump having socialist policies, I think they all have socialist policies.
Yeah, of course.
I think if Kamala had gotten in, like it's hard to say like what are the other options? Would they have been more or less socialist? I would argue that Trump is less socialist than we would have seen with Kamala. She certainly wanted to have government growing into different industries.
If Kamala was cogent and not retarded and actually had control over the government, I might agree with you. I feel like Kamala probably would have just been Biden 2.0 because they would have been like, okay, you have a nice speech, wine mom.
Right.
Go over here. Like, I think it would have been just the status quo. Like, here's the thing is like the way I view Donald Trump, at least as far as I can tell from a libertarian perspective, and maybe all the righties will hate me for this, right? But right. But I think the way that the way it appears to me is that Donald Trump is recognizing that all empires must fall or reorganize. And I think the day of America being like the super empire that controls the world is kind of falling to the wayside. Like we don't have the 2024 ended the deal where USD had to be traded for OPEC plus oil, so we have nothing really backing our dollar other than the hope that Saudi Arabia keeps trading in our oil.
Right.
And I think what we're seeing is a reconsolidation of power towards inward. Right. I think what we're seeing is Trump is recognizing, why are we spending so much money on NATO? Why are we spending so much money on USAID, right? Like silly programs like that. I don't think he's smart enough to really understand the State Department's role in all of those things and how that soft power is utilized, right? But so without a doubt, I think he's pulling out of certain areas and then pumping into other areas, right? I think it's what the bluster about Canada, that's probably mostly a joke, but Greenland, not really a joke, or the threats against Venezuela, or trying to work with Argentina and deals, is I think he sees America kind of shrinking in and isolating itself to a certain degree, both economically and from a power-based perspective. And in that process, what we have seen is a massive increase in taxation through tariffs. We have seen Donald Trump try and exert power over American corporations away from capitalism and the free market when it comes to Intel and AMD and NVIDIA and the tech industry. We have seen him try and nationalize at least some level of power and command control over large corporations like Walmart and Amazon and over the steel industry. And on top of all of that, he doesn't give a fuck how much money we spend. And it's that combination that I think makes him uniquely socialist. But of course, he's not a left-wing socialist, right? Like he doesn't give a fuck about gender studies classes in Panama or fucking certain, of course he's going to pull things out of that because he's not a left-wing socialist. He's very culturally populist, center-right culturally, but economically, and in terms of command control over the economy, he seems to be constantly pushing that barrier towards socialism. Now, whether you think it's a good or a bad thing is that, but to me, that is the most socialist president in our life.
Mr. Belay and the cutoff.
Mr. Belay and the Department
Debate
of
Night with
Numismatics
Grid again is
donated
brought to you by
$20.
Tactical
Super
Soap
chat.
from
Debate
Klondike
Night
Soap
with Grid
Company.
and Gibbs is
Watch
brought
with
to you
Grid
by
Plus, the
Tactical
only
Soap from
with a
Klondike
shake
Soap
cut
Company.
through feminism
Wash with
funk.
Grid's
Enjoy
mask,
debate.com
the
and
only
try
soap
Tactical
with the
Soap
strength
today.
to cut
Honestly,
through
Grid, you
feminism
missed
funk.
opportunity if you don't start making whatever that is. So I would do before I want you to respond to everything you said, but this is an argument I've heard many, many times recently since you started your not debate. We'll go with restarted people policy, Pentuple. But here is a question that he brought up, kind of interesting. Is Trump smart enough to understand the foreign policy implications and the economics? And I know that you have opinions on this, so I would like you to respond to that and then everything else he said. But I specifically wanted to bring that up because we hear from the left all the time. So it's interesting to hear it from a libertarian today. And this is a right-leaning channel on Grid, so I'm going to take the opportunity to ask a right-leaning question.
You can think what you want about Trump. I don't really find myself in a credible position to speak to his personal knowledge. I only see what he publicly announces. I can only go based off of the policies.
Look at him, not me.
Yeah. So
he's
I
the
mean,
one that threw you under the bus.
Whatever you want to think.
Well,
You
you're
think
the one
Trump's
who
an
said
idiot.
it.
You think Trump's an idiot. I'm probably not going to talk you out of that.
And he's like, anyways, let me just let that speech sit.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean,
no,
like
go
when
ahead,
you said Kamala was retarded. Yeah, obviously. But like when we're talking about Trump, I mean, it comes down to a little bit more nuance than that. I'm not really like.
Well, so the argument for the lefties.
To be
and
fair, I
guess now
called
the
Kamala
libertarian-
retarded.
Yes.
I said I don't know that Trump
We
is
can
smart
agree.
enough to grasp that.
But
There's a difference here.
That's
I don't
fair.
think Trump's
That's fair.
retarded.
That's fair. And I guess the reason I'm asking you this because I know you're the head of HQ, right? Unofficially. But like we're sitting here saying
No, it's official.
it's official. Okay.
It's official, boys.
I am the host
Yeah,
of MAGA
to us it
headquarters.
is, right? But I guess the reason
All
I'm asking,
MAGA talking points go through me,
yeah, I believe it. Yeah, legally, you can say that as a lawyer. But here's the reason.
not Ben Shapiro.
The reason I'm asking you this is because we hear this often, and now we're hearing from libertarians. People don't think Trump's intelligent enough to understand the nuances, the foreign policy, the economics. Do you
Yeah,
agree with that?
we should take a random person
Excuse
off
me.
the street and let them decide foreign policy. That would be a
So,
great
but, so
idea.
like, you don't think he would understand the social
well, it's the same
implications?
people that you're talking. Like, you take a random person off the street that has, who knows?
So I guess my next question is then, okay, if you do think he's smart enough, well, what do you have to think about the rest of what he has to say? Do you agree that he's not doing it for socialist things? Do you agree he's a
Well, I
right-leaning
think there's
socialist?
socialist things that he's done. I think there's things that are anti-socialist that he's done that other candidates wouldn't have done and other presidents wouldn't have done.
Mm-hmm.
So, I look at the ACA. I think that's just so aggressively socialist that it's hard to not put Obama at the top of that list. That's just how I see it. And Trump, in at least in spirit, it seems like he wants to reduce public funding of industry. Right. We had Doge, which we can agree or disagree about how effective that was, but in spirit, right, we're trying to reduce the government spending rather than focus on, we got to tax the billionaires. He's often criticized, and this is maybe something we can dive into because it's a little bit more vague of an argument, but Trump's always accused of favoring billionaires, right? Because he's giving tax cuts to private industry and stuff like that. He's not using government to try to insert into these industries.
Mm-hmm.
That seems pretty anti-socialist. And I don't think other presidents have taken that approach.
Yeah. So in terms of the ACA, like I do agree. If Trump was my problem with that is Trump had control of all three branches of government in his first term, and he didn't do shit to stop ACA.
Well, the Republicans did.
Okay,
The Republicans
all right,
did. But
sure,
when we talk about MAGA,
sure,
if we had
sure.
60 MAGA senators, I promise you things would be different. All right.
Maybe,
Promise you
maybe.
that.
But I mean, like, so is it, if we don't care, right? Because earlier in the debate we said that, like, why does it really matter what his specific opinion is?
Right.
It's about his results, right?
Sure.
And if it's about the fact that he, at the very least had rhinos and MAGA together, right? Like, if he couldn't stop the ACA before, and now we have this whole government shutdown based around the ACA, and what cuts are we going to destroy the ACA?
How much of like the fast food, cheap junk food industry is supported by like SNAP benefits and stuff? Is there a way we can connect? I'm
sure there's a study. I'm sure there's a study somewhere that can track that. But God knows, I don't think. And I think this is probably one of the better things that Trump did by, at the very least, putting Doge forward. As far as it was fairly toothless in its ability to significantly really cut waste.
Right.
I think it did. I think it was a great thing in that it showcased just how horrifically inefficient the state.
That's income. That's it.
I don't think they know where their money is going.
It's hard to imagine because our spending is so out of control that hundreds of billions of dollars can be reduced down to fractions and small percentages, right? But like, and I've made this point a couple times before, not that it makes it a great point, but we're often looking at, tax the billionaires as one of the solutions to bridging this gap between our spending and the revenue we collect. But as far as I've looked up, Elon Musk at most has paid $11 billion in a single year in taxes.
12 billion was the latest.
So we'll take 12 billion. Yeah. I mean, we could say 15 even for the sake of this argument, but we could double that, right? Say we saved $30 billion. If Doge saves $30 billion, we kind of tend to reduce that to, that's nothing. It's just a fraction of a percent. It's meaningless. Mm-hmm. But that's twice of what Elon would have been paying. We could double, triple his taxes, and it would be less than what we've saved there. Yeah, while I agree, it certainly is a minimal impact when you look at it against the whole. Right. But I think saving $30-40 billion here and however much Doge did save, I do think all of that is meaningful, especially when you put it against the people who are saying, the solution is just to tax the rich more. I mean, we could double their tax, we could quadruple their taxes, and it's still less than what Doge saved. So it actually, I would argue it was meaningful. It certainly was less than we would have liked. And there's probably a 10x we could have gotten. Let's talk about it. Wasn't meaningless.
No, I don't think it was meaningless, right? Doge was created by Obama, right? And then Donald, and it had been working insofar as that it was finding, fraud, waste, and abuse. And then Donald Trump, with Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, at least in the very beginning,
and big balls,
right? And big balls. Don't forget big balls, boys. Renamed it and then brought a media attention to it. But many of the things that Doge was finding were things that were found under the Biden administration. Most of the things were found after it was beefed up. Right. They weren't. You're correct.
Right. Which is like
there were some cuts made under Obama and Biden, but there was significantly more under Trump.
Right.
And
Elon. Boiling this all back down to the prompt, don't you find that at least in spirit, what Trump is trying to do here is reduce government spending, which is, I mean, in whatever industry it's considered when you buy Sesame Street in Iran.
You can't I agree that Donald Trump has found ways to cut fraud, waste, and abuse. Right in his first administration, he had stated that he was not going to sign any new regulations without cutting regulations, and held up to that promise fairly well. And of course, Doge, moving USAID, but the problem is that cutting government spending is fine, but if it's less than the increase that we have to pay because of the ever increasing debt, then it's not drops in the bucket. It's actually meaningless. And you had said, well, I don't think it's meaningless if we cut 30 billion here or that. I do. I think it's meaningless when we are, $37 trillion in debt and approaching more. And then the biggest piece of legislation that is to be this hailed as his shining achievement of a omnibus bill is increasing the debt ceiling. Because at the end of the day,
grant that though.
Yeah, at the end of the day, let me just finish. It's taxation is going to be based off of government spending, right? Like it doesn't matter who you tax, the tax is coming from somewhere. Be it, if we don't pull in enough revenue, then the tax will be in the form of inflation, right? Like, and so we have this.
Well, is there anything we can do that's anti-socialist then? Because like the big beautiful bill.
I didn't say that the cutting the spending wasn't anti-socialist in some regard. I'm saying when you look at it in the totality of his administration, that it becomes meaningless if he doesn't oh cool, I'm doing some spending cuts.
To be fair,
what you have is efficient inflation.
Right. Well,
I would say you know what I mean. Like that's
even if and maybe I have to separate these as two independent events, but just as a matter of like number principle, like if you save $20 going out to eat. You're trying to budget at home, you're, saving that money. And then you go out and you buy an iPod, right? Like you went out and you bought a $200 iPod. Just shout out 2008 for some reason.
Hey, in the back. Hey, in the back. Shh.
Oh, they're fine. They're good.
Yeah, go ahead.
It wasn't. All right, anyways.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you the bomb.
It's still like you still saved that $20. You're in a better position than when you would if you had bought the iPod and spent the $20.
Like
no, I'm not saying this. I'm saying
it's like I saved $20 and then I spent $200 on a new iPad. I didn't need.
But what I'm saying is those are two independent events that you still saved $20. And I'm not saying that this is good that I support the iPod buying. Obviously, that's also irresponsible and that's overspending and that's not within your budget, obviously.
Right.
But I'm just saying like. It is objectively better than doing both.
It's like when a girl goes out and she was like, "Hey, it was on sale for 50% off," and then it's like, "So I saved $20." No, you didn't.
Well,
I spent $20.
I gotta be honest. That's not even girl math. That's what we call druggy math. You're like, hey, if I spend this on this fucking meth.
Well, I'm just saying, like, if you treat them as two independent events, like
if you isolate them from the context,
you bought the iPod
then it's
already.
Isolated from the context,
right? But let me put it this way: just reverse the order of the events. You bought the iPod I read already. Okay, that was a bad decision, and that was overspending.
Right.
You still shouldn't go out, and you should save that $20. You shouldn't go spend that at McDonald's.
Yeah, of course.
Right. So it's like I'm just saying, like,
but you're not saving money if you're going deeper into credit card debt.
In the overall, you're not saving money when you add them together the same way. But if you make them independent events, it is saving money. Your bank account after both transactions.
It's devoid of the context.
Well,
right?
I'm just saying it doesn't solve the problem of spending. We're obviously still overspending.
If you didn't spend on either, wouldn't that be not saving?
What I'm saying is you're still overspending regardless.
Let me rephrase
and especially with the iPod. I'm saying that $20 doesn't become there is a difference between doing both and only buying the iPod.
Let me
even though that as a percentage the food might feel like less, it is less meaningful, especially if your goal is
he has made some
cuts,
but he has also increased spending in many ways.
Okay, yeah,
that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that's. I'm just saying it doesn't necessarily devalue the money.
No, I just don't. The reason I say it,
it just doesn't help us get closer.
I'm gonna let you respond, and then I do want to reframe it a little bit.
This guy, he's got more
time. My argument.
I know my argument. You talk more, but I'm gonna reframe it here. Go ahead.
My argument is this: is that I believe, right, that Trump is shifting his socialist policies based off of the values that he holds, and some of the values like USAID or too much money in Medicare reimbursements to states for illegal immigrants and things like that are absolutely against his values, and those socialist policies he's curtailing. But at the end of the day, if he's increasing taxes and he's increasing spending and he's increasing the debt limit, then he's just shifted it towards his form of socialism. That doesn't make it less socialist.
So I guess this is the question I want you to answer, right, specifically, because I think his point's pretty clear. Okay. But I think there's a question that you should answer that he needs to answer as well. But it's that, okay, the topic of this debate is he's the most socialist president of our lifetime. And let's just go. How old are you?
29.
I don't know was he alive when Clinton was president?
Yes.
Okay, so
at the very end.
Yeah. So let's go back to Clinton. We'll Clinton in. Okay.
My first memory was 9/11.
Bush, like barely.
How old are you?
35.
Oh, okay, yeah. So technically, I'm alive for Bush Senior too. Okay, cool. Yeah. I thought we were the same age almost. I'm like anyway. Not important. We were having a moment there, chat. Anyway, here's the question. So let's just go to fucking Bush Senior then, so it'll include both of you. I don't care, and me, because that's 2 out of 3.
I only went back to Clinton.
Fine. We can go back. We can agree to Clinton.
92.
Let me ask.
No, hold on. Here's the question.
I have a better question.
Well, no, this is the important question.
It's going to be a better chat. Remember,
y'all can vote on the question.
Remember, chat. It's going to be a better question.
The question is this. All right. The debate right now is the most socialist president of our lifetime. Fabian has pretty much laid out why Trump is a socialist. And I think that by Fabian's definition, you can't even argue that he's not. Now, here's my question
I've
to you.
presented 4 or 5 things that make him
Sure.
anti-socialist.
Sure, you have.
We're engaging
not
on the
question
topic.
I'm about to ask you.
Yeah.
That's not the question.
This guy.
This guy.
Hold on.
This guy.
I'm
You want
reframing.
to turn against him,
I'm
bro?
trying. This is just trust the moderator. Trust the moderator here. The question I want you to answer is: one, it's two-part. Who is the most socialist president in our lifetime? Going back to Clinton.
I'd say Obama.
Okay, you say Obama. And two, how is Trump? And this is for both
And
of
the
y'all,
auto
but I'll
pen
let you go
president.
first. How is Trump either more or less socialist than Obama? You go first.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, if the Affordable Care Act is the most socialist legislation and Trump is rallied against it, I know he gets flack for not having presented his replacement, but he's not a legislator.
He has the concept of a plan,
Well,
brother.
right, but he's the executive branch. Isn't it fair to say, like, look, I ran for president. I want the ACA replaced. The legislature should legislate. Like he's saying, I'm elected. I ran on this.
Mhm.
I want the ACA replaced. I want a replacement plan. I still don't think that means that the legislature, whose job it is to do, like, should he give the legislature their work? Should he do the work for them because he ran on it and said that he wants it the most? I would say, even though he's ran on it, it's still their burden
We
to
ran on a lot of things.
ultimately get that job done, because Trump could come up with the perfect replacement. He's going to take it to all of these senators and get all their changes and stuff. This is their job. That's what the legislators do. So while he hasn't come up with a replacement, I don't know that it's necessarily his burden. And I would say, where are the Republicans in Congress? Did you not see what all of us just voted for? It's you guys have the burden to create the replacement. They haven't done it. And the Republicans in Congress, I think it would be more easier to argue, are very socialist if we want to make a lot of those arguments. But the ACA being the most socialist legislation in my life and Trump rallying against that, I think in spirit, Trump is the anti-socialist candidate. He's the anti-socialist president of my lifetime. And that's why I gave out, these different examples. Like we went through the Department of Education, USAID, electric vehicle subsidies. And here's another one that maybe we can just kind of dive into for a second. But he wanted to give veterans access to private health care using the funds that are put aside for the VA.
Mhm.
So that feels very anti-socialist in principle to say, hey, head out into the private market. We're giving you your benefits. I don't think it's necessarily inherently socialist to give benefits to the veterans, right? I support it, at least, even if it is. But that seems like an anti-socialist approach to say, hey, the government's not handling that industry very well. They're not providing the best healthcare to veterans. Take those dollars to the private market. Seems a little bit more like capitalist minded for a president.
Yeah. So let's go through all these things. Hold on. So I would say that Trump is the most socialist. Obviously, I'm defending the position.
Right.
I don't disagree that Obama is probably to toss up between Bush and Obama for second
what
place.
has Trump done as big as the ACA? Do we even agree that the ACA is like? Let's not say it's the most socialist. It's extremely socialist. We'll just say it is
without
very
a doubt a
socialist.
socialist program.
Intrudes
right?
on the healthcare
It is-
industry dramatically.
It intrudes on the
Affects
healthcare
the prices
industry.
and
It affects
premiums of
pricing.
all
Yes,
of that
yes,
for
yes,
everybody.
yes.
Okay.
It's an individual mandate that the Supreme Court tried to then rule as a tax, so then it's okay, which is a loophole, I think, to circumnavigate people's constitutional rights. Yes, it is an expansion of power into the healthcare industry, without a doubt. I mean, Bush, had some Medicare, Medicaid programs. I don't think Clinton had any major stuff in that regard, but maybe I'm just misremembering. I was a baby. But yeah, I would still say that Trump is the most socialist. Moving to the ACA, the problem that I have with this is like, Obama wanted a more socialist version of the ACA, but we're not having. Are we having that? Hold on.
Sure.
Are we or are we not having that conversation based upon the results, right? And if the results was also that he just signed it, right? So like it was the legislation that made the ACA, right? But it was, but also it was.
But it's also kind of his prize accomplishment.
Right. It was
like
yes,
Obama's
he was also
thing.
pushing it, right?
And like to zoom in when it passed, and he's like,
right. But I mean, like what I'm saying is that like it is absolutely true that the executive branch doesn't write legislation, but at the same time, the executive, the president,
well, he pushed the idea.
runs
He pushed
on
that,
it, right?
I
He
did the
ran on
legislature write ACA? Obama didn't give it to him. They wrote it, right? He ran on it. He wanted the Affordable Care Act.
But that's what I mean is that like there's obviously some level of the president being the face of the party and then working with Congress and the Senate to whip other Republicans or people into their major legislation, much the same way with the Big Beautiful Bill, right? The Big Beautiful Bill is not Trump's bill, by
Right,
by
but
that
I would say
definition,
it's similar to
but
the
it
ACA
is,
in that it's his.
right. Like it is. My issue with it is that
It would have passed with Kamala.
right.
It
but
would
I
have
mean,
even been
like
through the Senate.
the thing is that Trump and many Republicans absolutely ran against the ACA. That was a big part of their platform.
And where's the
And
replacement?
then when they had the power, they did nothing.
I agree. I agree with you.
Hold on. But here's the thing is that Trump was not on Truth Social and Twitter screaming at the Republicans, every single one of them that refuses to do something about the ACA, not the same way he is against Thomas Massey and Rand Paul every time they stand up for capitalism. Every time
fair.
they stand up for free markets and capitalism,
I wanna-
there's
hold on. I wanna
20
make a
tweets
clarification.
from Trump's
Go ahead.
toilet
Right.
being like, you're an evil piece of shit. You're the worst thing ever. How dare you? All you do is side with the Democrats, even though Massey votes with Republicans 91% of the time.
Right.
And so it's like, yeah, sure, we can say, oh, it's the legislator's responsibility, but if Trump's not doing shit to push it, then
Right.
how against it is he really?
For the
Go
purposes
ahead.
of our
I'll let you ask
conversation,
the question, and I have a
I just
question
want to
for
make a clarification for our prompt. We're talking about the most socialist president. We're talking
Yeah,
about
it's a hard thing.
well, are we
to
talking
unpack.
about in effect or in intent? Like, do you think Trump is
I think-
intending to be socialist, or do you think he's effectively socialist?
I think he is intending to be his form of socialist,
Mm.
and I think the combination of his intention and sometimes his
Right, but-
inability, his how do I say this?
lack
His
of nuance.
his incompetency in certain regard leads to it as well.
Okay, so actually, this
So I would say I think both matter, but I think
Right.
maybe I think
so.
like, do you think a
intention probably
socialist-
matters less.
Do you think
right?
a socialist economist, like a leftist socialist economist, would be like, oh, I actually like Trump on economics?
I don't think
He's
that they would like
socialist.
him, but like under no recent president, right? Have we had
Well, with pro,
no,
do
we never-
pro-socialists
we never had
consider
change.
him
We never had
socialist?
change. We can believe in communism.
Well, hold on.
We never had communists supporting
Let
Biden. We absolutely had communists trying to grift off of the change in the socialist policies that Trump did to try and mash them together to be like, see, you're not that different than us. Support MAGA communism.
Oh, hold on.
Right? Like, I think that there is some more socialist, more pro-family, more protecting industry, more there is something there.
So-
Maybe it's a recent cultural upswing. I don't know, but I do think that you have had some socialists
let me ask
enjoy
you this.
some of his policies.
Let me ask you this, because I think that let me try to like ask what I think you're getting at, because I think this is a good question. I've been
Mhm.
kind of wondering a little bit. Okay, so the prompt is who the most socialist president of our lifetime, right?
Mhm.
So when I think Obama, I think all the things he's mentioned. I also think of things like cash for clunkers. I think
Yeah.
of all the ad
Yeah, that was
subsidies,
that
right?
was a failure.
Yeah. Well, arguably that's his most successful policy. And now, I mean, you and I are on the same side of the socialism issue, but like
Mm-hmm.
that, arguably people argue that's his most. But anyway, that's not the point. The point is though. So when I'm looking at Obama, extremely socialist, right in my mind, right? And then you're
most,
saying,
would you say?
listen,
What would
I'm
you
not.
say, moderator?
Don't worry about it. Side with me,
I see
moderator.
you. I see you. I see
That's
you,
good try.
sir.
It was extremely socialist. But however, I think that you made a good point with the right wing socialism. He's expanded the government, and then he's done things like with Doge. And it's if a Democrat takes over and they use the government agency he's created, that would be expansion of government. As a Texan,
Would be fair, it was Obama.
Sure.
Obama created it.
Sure. But as a Texan, I'm sympathetic to many of these views that you're saying. I've had issues with Pentuple when I've told them that. I've had issues with your take. Here's my question, though.
Mhm.
In my mind, you know what? I will just fucking say it because I think it'll make this more interesting. There's no way in my mind that what the fuck is happening?
What is a clown car
We
driving
got-
by?
Free
that's a good
EOD.
Fucking Nashville's
Free,
wild,
free,
boys.
free
Why are you
EOD.
We
not
got
here?
trains. We
EOD.
got but we had an orgy outside. It's crazy stuff. Anyway, back to what I was asking. So
Yeah,
I guess in
yeah.
my mind, as the moderator, and this may be a little biased, but I've been pressing Pentuple mostly, so I'm impressing you now.
Yeah.
I see Obama as maybe the most socialist, like in history.
No way.
Like even
That's
more than
crazy
FDR.
talk.
Right. But however, I do see the argument for the right wing socialists because there's concerning things Trump does. How do you argue that now at this stage? Like the only argument in my mind that I'm seeing for what you're saying
Mhm.
is the big beautiful bill, which I think is a substantial argument, and then the argument of creation of agencies that I know he didn't technically create Doge, out of something new, but he's created.
That wasn't my argument. That's just one you've heard before. I think.
Sure, but I mean, your argument is that he's more socialist than Obama.
Yeah.
And when I compare the two as a conservative, I feel like if that's a hard comparison. Sell me on why he's more socialist to Obama, knowing that I'm sympathetic to a lot of your economic views.
Yeah. So let's first go through some of the most socialist policies of Obama.
Yeah.
Right. You mentioned cash for clunkers. I think the the emissions regulations, right, is another huge one that radically changed the car industry. That's why many of the reason you see these giant trucks is so that they can get enough mass to meet emissions regulations. The ACA being another big one. I would say the weaponization of the IRS to attack conservative organizations, and specifically use the IRS to audit conservative think tanks activist organizations and companies.
Shameful.
Shameful
socialism.
And if you can think of a few more, throughout the debate, like I'm fine with looking at them.
Everything he did.
Right. My biggest difference here is, number one, tariffs and scale is huge in terms of its impact. It may not be like,
this is through the lens of like GDP leaderboard, right?
Well, I wouldn't say GDP
always
leaderboard, but I'm just saying it's a massive tax increase.
Right, sure.
It's a huge tax increase, right?
Well, it's intended to be in a way.
Yeah,
it's supposed
it's
to raise
intended
the
to be.
prices so that people bring in.
That's the intention of it.
There are positives. Are there any positives with tariffs? Because I think I can agree with you when you say like, oh, no economist would recommend tariffs. Which actually,
I would quote Thomas Sowell and say that there are no such thing per se as positive and negatives. There are trade-offs. Okay. I would say the deal's not worth it. Well, I would say I think there are more negatives in almost every situation for a tariff than there are positives.
But like if we're talking to an economist and we're saying like what's going to grow the economy, what's going to make the economy GDP bigger, I think it's easy to say right.
Tariffs are not going to grow the economy.
I can concede that, but I still think there's value in tariffs, especially when we're talking about domestic manufacturing. I mean, there is a benefit when the foreign good costs more to sell and bring to your customer than a domestic opportunity.
I completely disagree. I think it's destructive towards price. I think it's destructive towards
the
poor and the working class.
What I'm saying is, like, I understand, but that's kind of the point, because we're saying, look, they're importing
it depends on whether or not you value the thing being made here as opposed to it being made elsewhere cheaper.
Right.
And there is and the problem with that value is that it's subjective. And the best way to determine subjective value,
security concerns
the best way to determine subjective value is in the market with the price mechanism, and tariffs interrupt the market's proof of what people actually value.
Would you lean towards like, oh, let's just max out the service economy and pursue all of the higher GDP, like those higher jobs? I think there is a value in bringing manufacturing back.
Well, no,
I think the purpose of tariffs ultimately is supposed to raise the prices of the foreign imported goods so that the domestic ones can be invested in, can be produced, can actually get sales. Because can we at least, like, just as a starting point, I'm very simple on economics, but if you have a gadget, we're both selling a gadget, and I sell it for $2 more than you.
The term widget.
We'll say widget. Okay. If I'm selling a widget for $2 more than you sell it, your sales volume will be higher because of that's the price demand. We're selling the same thing. You're selling it at a cheaper price. You'll get more sales. That's generally true, right?
Assuming all of the things are equal. We have the same market access. We have the same quality.
Right, sure.
The same packaging.
Well, let's say you didn't have the ability to produce as much as me, but you could invest in that. And what would give you the incentive to invest in that is that it costs more to bring that good to your customers if you import it. Say, okay, maybe we don't have necessarily the best manufacturing for this widget, but that opens the door and the opportunity to say, hey, it's actually worth investing in this in manufacturing this domestically now.
But that's not,
and look, it's something that takes a long time.
When you so let's assume we have a widget. The widget is $100, right? And it's $80 from China. Right, people aren't investing in the $100 widget from America.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So you have to make it $110 from China,
and then everyone pays $110 or $100, right? And then, of course, obviously, once you fuck with the price mechanism, investment moves over to a new sector of the economy,
right? But then when the manufacturing is here,
engaged in the socialist manipulation of price,
but paying $100 and that money staying and that going to the income of somebody in your community is better than paying $20 less, because the $80 goes to China. Now that's gone. That's leaving our economy.
But we want
jobs here.
You gain goods.
Yeah, but what are these goods that we're importing from China? These aren't cheap. Like we're not importing gold. We're not like it doesn't. These aren't things that hold their value. They get thrown out and they end up in the dumpster because they're iPods.
That's a critique of materialism. That's not like
100%. But there is a demand and there's a consumer demand for that. So I'm saying, look, if we're going to have a consumer economy,
value is subjective.
Do you think
people want those things?
Right. But that's what I'm saying is that just because they're paying more doesn't mean that there's no value when that money goes to pay the salary of your neighbor versus a slightly less in cost, but it goes overseas and we never see it again. And that item ends up in the trash.
This is the problem with contextualizing economics in one transaction. You're absolutely right? If I buy something from an American company, right, then that money, that asset that is the U.S. dollar, right, stays within the local economy, and trades within the local economy. But the problem is that if let's say I need this product, whatever the product is,
beef. That's the product.
Yeah, sure, it's beef, whatever. It doesn't matter, right? I need this product, right? So I'm going to buy this product no matter what.
Right.
If I buy this product at $20 or $30 more, then you have to compare it to what could that $20 or $30 in the economy gone to that I could have also meaningfully increase the value of my life.
Because right, but we're talking about the $20. You're talking about the $20. Where could that, the difference between 80 and 100, where could that $20 have gone? But now I'm saying we lost that 80 when you sent it overseas.
No, you didn't. You got a good. And
well, yeah, but what are we getting from China? We're getting shirts, we're getting clothes, we're getting things that end up in the garbage. We're not getting things that are
getting
assets.
iPhones. Like, what are you talking about? Like,
we do get iPhones, but a lot of the stuff we get is, a lot of the stuff that we're getting, I'm just saying, ultimately isn't like these aren't assets you're going to be passing on to your kids. A lot of these consumer products are things that just disappear one day. You use them and their lifetime is gone. They're like temporary. Like, no, I'm just saying like a GameCube or something. Like, say you buy some video games. You know what I mean? Eventually, those don't like. I've got a GameCube sitting in my house. It's basically garbage, right? These are things that
the
we
question
purchased.
is, were you going to buy the GameCube one way or the other?
Well,
the question isn't like,
well,
is
sure,
there an
but
inherent
that's the question.
Value in the soul of America of a fucking GameCube?
So okay,
well that makes sense.
Well, okay, this is kind of actually beef is a perfect example. So, what's the most libertarian country in the world right now? Argentina. It's the libertarian dream. And then we're gonna come over here and we're gonna buy Argentina beef. That your definition of socialism is a governmental manipulation of the economy. That's basically socialism, correct? Did I summarize that?
Sure.
So the government buying guarantee to buy Argentina beef, that's very socialist, right? Like that. Would that be an argument? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. If the state is buying beef from another country, is that part of the Argentinian deal that recently came out?
Yeah.
Is that our tax dollars are buying Argentinian beef?
Yes. Yeah. Basically, long story short. So
you didn't know that?
Yeah.
Bro, you didn't know that?
It was.
Are you serious?
Hold on. It was my.
I didn't know anything.
We're gonna be on a soapbox next.
I know that you work in the ranching industry. I just want to so I'm going to trust you on this. But it was my understanding that
it's more of a guarantee that we're going to buy the beef. Let me pause you. Hold on. I got a super chat. How do you define socialism, and how does Trump fit the category of socialist president, most socialist president? Also,
we should debate that.
What the fuck?
Yeah, we should debate that, and we should make our definitions known in the beginning.
Old yet GameCube, you guys are can.
Yeah,
I don't know if you've been here since the beginning, but we have been debating the definition of socialism, and it's
we agreed on the definition. I think
the entire time. That is what
I think he was being sincere.
I know. I had a whole bit there.
Get the joke.
Yeah, I had a whole bit. Anyway,
right, so did you have a follow up?
Yes, I do. I guess
tax money, which I don't think is what that deal is.
Listen, I'm going to get my plugs in. No, I guess my question is: so okay, are all trade deals in this aspect socialist?
Well, no. If he utilizes the power of the state to guarantee a free trade deal, then I would say that is an anti-socialist. It's as anti-socialist as a presidential deal or trade deal can be, without simply saying I disband the U.S. government. So, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's essentially.
So we talked about Clinton was NAFTA socialist.
I think both NAFTA and the U.S. U.S. Canada, Mexico, AMC, American
USFCA, right?
Yeah.
No,
I would say that they're both.
That's not
I think
it.
they both have hold on. You know what I mean? It was the U.S. Canada, Mexico agreement.
The
or whatever
fucking North America.
The one we're not following.
I would say that both NAFTA and that have socialist elements in them, but NAFTA was relatively free trade compared to what was before.
Do you think that NAFTA is more free trade or less free trade than what Trump's doing now with individual trade deals?
I'm going to be honest with you. I would have to dig through NAFTA again. Like it's been a
Sure,
while
that's
since
fair.
I've looked specifically at Clinton's NAFTA deal, and especially compared to what was before. It is my understanding that NAFTA was a little bit more free trade, reduced imports, costs and duties.
I guess the question I'm really trying to get to you,
but I also think it came with like some certain like it came with weird shit like paying for border protect. Like it came with like different government programs. There was like a promise to like for like Mexico to do something in Texas as well that never got fulfilled.
The reason I'm
There was
asking
weird
this,
shit in that.
the reason is because obviously libertarian, you can say any government, socialist, right? And so the
You keep
reason
sympathizing my position, but
sure, I'm oversimplifying. Don't worry. That's kind of what I do. I guess the question I'm asking right here is, what is your metric for determining what is more socialist? Because I know you said it's right wing socialist, it's left wing socialist. I mean, I'm on the right, you're on the right, he's on the right, right? So by our metric, I mean my metric, I it's hard for me to go, oh, right wing socialism is the same as left wing socialism in scale. Like, so how are you deciding this Trump is more socialist in light of these things and things like NAFTA?
Yeah, I think that's an incredibly, and I don't mean to like put a dig at you to say it's like an unfair question.
You gonna take that,
right?
bro?
I mean, he can
You gonna take it?
The
The question is unfair, bro. You gonna take that?
Everybody's talking to the moderator now.
No.
Yeah, whatever.
What I mean is that like it's we're I think there is a certain subjectivity to it because we get into the realm of consequentialism, right? And the issue here is, look, all socialism is bad. And so then we get into the argument of what is more or less socialist. And part of the problem with that is, well, what are the effects 10 years later? What are the effects 100 years later? And then when I look at right-wing socialism, for example, just look at any country that was fascist today, and then look at any country that was communist today. Well, what you're going to see is fascist countries tended to recover fairly well. Right? Like, I mean, it was destructive to their economy. It was destructive to their people. Sometimes there was some genocide, right? Like it was fucked up, right? But at the end of the day, Germany's doing all right, okay? But like Cambodia, not so fucking much, right? Like when communism comes in, it seems to be that the pro-social values of right-wing socialism or fascism, seem to be less destructive to the culture, and the deleterious effects seem to be able to recover from quicker.
Right.
And so maybe you can make the argument that by Trump being a right-wing socialist that's pushing like pro-nation, pro-family, right? Like without a doubt, funding, one of the things he campaigned on was funding for IVF, right?
Right.
That's a pro-family, pro-social form of socialism, without a doubt. Now, it may be a problem for the birth rate. It may cause people to family planning to go longer. We may end up with more fucking autistic spurgs, which means more libertarians, which means actually the greatest policy ever.
Which means more debates just like this.
Yeah, right.
Like
and
subscribe.
So it's like we get into this realm of like we're attempting to look at the consequences of the socialism, and it becomes all right.
Well,
it becomes a difficult measurement. All right.
Yeah.
But
it's fine. It's women.
What I'm saying is that definitively,
we're not filming a show or nothing in here, guys. Sorry. These are the problems with live shows. You just never know what's going to happen in the background. I apologize.
No, it's fine. I'm used to
yeah. We got, by the way, I'm gonna by this provider. Y'all got another 12 minutes to keep going, and then we're gonna do closings. We'll do 5-minute closings, and then we'll go to.
I don't know that I'll even have a closing, to be honest. Because
we got 12 minutes.
We're just going through this.
We're working it out.
Yeah. So I have a couple more things that I wanted to discuss, because I think we could point at every president and say, oh, look at this thing that they did was socialist, right? And I'm a little bit more of a, like, we're going to have a mixed economy guy. So I'm not inherently like rejecting everything because I'm like, oh, I had a little twinge of socialism.
I mean, I can speak on the economy and the policy descriptively as well without being like,
right. But let's say Trump pulling out of the Paris Climate Accord, him defunding green energy research, right? This leaves those tasks to the private market by doing that. That's the government getting out of intervening in that development,
and then he moves that money over to farming subsidies. You know what I mean? It's it's the difference in value.
Sure, but we're talking about the pull out of the green energy market here. And I'm saying that it's anti-social. A socialist president, in my mind, would say, no, we're going to keep funding this industry. We want to stay involved and make sure that the government is essentially intervening in that research, in that industry, and propping it up. So when he pulls out, I say, okay, well, that's a pretty anti-socialist energy coming from Trump when he does something like that.
Yeah, I mean, like, again, like I said, we agree
So
that
why is
all of
the
our
presidents
presidents
that
have
wanted-
socialist policies.
Right, but
And
they're
hopefully
also,
we agree. Hold on. Hopefully
Yes,
we
yeah,
agree
go
that all of the presidents that we're speaking of have socialist and pro-market policies.
right.
And I think we also agree that all of the presidents that we're discussing, from Clinton on, have different values in which they place that socialism. Right. Like, for example, the super, like the No Child Left Behind is a very socialist policy by Bush Jr.
Right.
Right. But that is a value that was cared about by that administration. Whereas, EV subsidies and like Obama had the Solyndra scandal, right, where he was just funneling money over to a Chinese
Right.
company that was producing no fucking solar panels so that Biden's chief of staff could get rich, right? Like that's the real reason that was done, right? So some of those values are just straight up corruption, and then some of those values are what the left believe are good things, versus the right doesn't really give a fuck about the EV subsidies or doesn't give a fuck about solar panel subsidies.
Right. Well, okay. So,
But if we're moving them over to farm subsidies, that's not left socialism. That's just different socialism.
Farm subsidies. I don't know anything about that. So I'm just going to grant that for tonight.
Fair enough.
So what I want to ask is, because I've given a bunch of things that I think Trump did that were anti-capitalist, right?
Yeah.
We've talked about things that every other president has done that would be counting as socialist. But when we're talking about who's the most socialist, I guess I could point at these things and say, here's a list of things that I came up with Trump that are anti-socialist. What has Obama or Biden done that you would say was an anti-socialist move? Because I would argue that we can find socialism on all of them, but at least with Trump, we can find moves that are actually anti-socialist. And that's why I think it would lead to the conclusion of, which is our prompt, that he's not the most socialist.
Right. So starting with Bill Clinton, right? The repeal of Glass-Steagall was without a doubt an extremely pro-capitalist move. I would say that
was it anti-socialist though? Because like we can,
it was. I mean, he got rid of the regulation between banking and general banking and investment banking.
Okay, we'll get back to that.
I would say that working with oh god, it wasn't. What was the Newt?
You're nothing. You're nothing.
Working with Newt Gingrich on welfare reform.
Okay.
To try and severely reduce it. One of the things they did was like get rid of that tiered system of welfare, introduce that tiered system of welfare so that people could actually go get jobs and like get off of like being quote unquote welfare queens. I do think there were elements of NAFTA that were certainly pro-capitalist, but I also think, like I said, I'd have to look at it again to really dig into it, how much of it is socialist. Moving on to Bush. Oh God. I don't know if I can think off the top of my head.
Well, maybe he's the most socialist.
Maybe
we can meet in the middle and it's Bush.
Maybe we can meet in the middle. It's Bush, right? Obama. I think one of the big things Obama did that was pro-capitalist was.
Well, I want anti-socialist.
No, I just couldn't. I just think right this second I can't think of like.
I don't want to look for
Bush positions.
Yeah,
it's been a while. I was
that's pretty capitalist.
Nobody
I want to
took
say
over Iraq for a while.
not necessarily pro-capitalist, anti-socialist. Because I don't know, and maybe they are, but are those synonymous to say? If it's anti-socialist, does that make it pro-capitalist?
I mean,
maybe it does. I'm just not the economist here at the table.
Is that Trump is coming in to be a bull in a china shop. So he's changing a lot of things, regardless of it's socialist or capitalist. Regardless if it's anti-socialist or pro-capitalist or anti-capitalist, or right, like so he's changing a lot of things. I think the Trump administration put through a metric fuck ton of executive orders in the first couple of days to try and reverse
executive
things
orders. What make it socialist? You think?
No. I'm not saying that's.
You're saying
I'm saying
a lot
that's
of those
an element
were
of a lot of
socialist.
change, right? Like
Okay.
Whether or not you would say that this one is pro-capitalist or this one is pro-socialist, like he is certainly coming through to be a populist figure that is putting forward something very different than what, like, I would say a lot of the previous administrations were kind of ping-ponging off of the status quo.
Well, a lot of Trump,
Obama, right? You said, like, what are some, like, one of the things he did is he stayed the fuck out of the way of fracking. Like, fracking went up massively under the Obama administration.
I guess I can.
You know, like, I think that was, but I mean, obviously, there's a lot of socialist policies that Obama engaged in. Biden, I don't know that Biden did anything. Like, I think Biden was a fucking zombie.
Well, he was
you know what I mean? Like, I feel like
autopen president.
Yeah, I mean, like the autopen president was just kind of like going through as
He beat
from a
Medicare.
from a cultural perspective, I would say that it's very possible to say that Biden was the most socialist in effect in culture, right?
Okay.
There was a lot of a lot of the shit that was happening in schools.
I'm just
You know what I mean? Like social emotional learning, right? The ways that they try and sneak critical theory into elementary and middle schools was, like supported by him. A lot of the, yeah. I mean, there's an argument from him, but it's like it's hard to critique Biden because everything he did was while he was asleep at the wheel.
Yeah. Well, let's get to one of the last things I guess we want to throw at you: just deregulation in general, right?
Right.
Would you say Trump is the most pro deregulation president of our lifetime?
I would say that
because that's literally saying the government is
Do you think
intervening
Trump,
less.
I think Trump.
Do you think Trump is the most?
I would say, yeah. I don't know that any of the other presidents had the policy where every new regulation required the repeal of 2 or 5 or 10 or whatever the rule was for whatever area of deregulation it was.
I would say it's close between Clinton and Trump. And Trump is very much
right, but those are definitively like that is the government pulling because, like I said, we're not talking about just public ownership.
No, hold on. Clinton went through a lot of deregulation. Now, '94 crime bill and shit. He went through a lot of stuff. Yeah, he went through Monica Lewinsky too.
Hey yo.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, but no, I would say, like, again, the repeal of Glass-Steagall and some of the banking stuff that he did, as well as some of the welfare stuff that he did, I would say he's close. But no, I think Trump is very much in favor of deregulation. The problem is that it's just more efficient socialism when you look at all of the other things that he's stacked up for, right? Like, I wouldn't say that, like, oh, there's no socialism.
Fighting an army.
Well, I'm just saying, like,
yeah, I don't know.
Like, China has no socialism because they implement because Xi Jinping implements a bunch of policies to make the government more efficient, right? I would say that that's a good thing, right? I would say
we defined it as government control or intervention over industry, and so deregulation is inherently the government taking less.
Yeah, like I'm saying it pales in comparison to nationalizing industries.
Weakening the grip with the left hand and tightening on the right.
Right.
Is
Like
not...
I'm saying Trump, without a doubt, represents, unlike Obama's campaign slogan, the most amount of change in an American president that we've had in our lifetimes as well. Like, I don't think anyone has tried to shake up what is occurring for better or worse than Trump. And I think everybody can kind of agree to that.
Oh yeah. I mean,
left, right, center, libertarian, whatever.
I don't even know that goes. So, that's not defeating at all.
Yeah. And so, like, yeah, I just don't think that it pales. I think it pales in comparison to some of the larger kind of like pushes in command control of the economy and in terms of spending.
I have one more.
Go ahead. One more.
So, this one's a long shot, but I just wanted to kind of throw this in there so we get a little conversation. I think it'd be interesting.
I don't know. We might have time.
Would you say Trump is the most pro cryptocurrency president? Like, is there a conversation to be had here where it's like the government, and I know the Federal Reserve is a private bank, but it's like when we're talking about really freeing ourselves from that system. That's pretty like anti-socialist in my mind.
The problem is that can swing either way. Right,
I agree
with you. Like we could get into central banking digital currencies, and then he becomes, without a doubt, the worst
until he
nightmare
goes
of,
until he goes in that
everybody.
direction. Right, but until he goes in that direction, and with his support for Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies being out there, I'm not saying the meme coins are the best part of this, by the way. I'll admit
you know what
that.
I'm saying? Like, you have like Binance financing Elon Musk's acquisition of Twitter. You know what I mean? Like, you have like it's a dirty speculative market in some ways, and it's like an insanely necessary means of getting off of fiat currency and the other, and then mixing in the Federal Reserve. Like, yeah, sure, he bought a reserve. Holding on to what is essentially a commodity currency.
It kind of helps.
Kind of socialist, but
it does help the market for crypto that the government's in it. They don't control it.
I mean, it's similar to like the currency swap with Argentina, right? Like, it's socialist, but it's like, did we make a profit off of it?
I mean, it's healthy, I think, for Bitcoin that governments are getting behind it. It doesn't give them control or ownership over it.
The problem, the other issue that I have, right, is that what is so good about the, currency, and especially synthetic commodity currencies like Bitcoin.
Well, we're talking about
it is in a competitive market, right?
We're talking about the control.
Hear me out.
I'm gonna go for another like 3 minutes.
Well, we're talking about the Federal Reserve.
Hold on. Let me just say this, right? Like,
cool.
So like when Trump acquires 10% of Intel, right? What I look at is I see Intel being able, spoiler alert, AMD fanboy here, boys, right? But I see them failing to be able to compete with AMD in the small market of CPUs from personal buyers, but being able to massively outcompete AMD because they have government contracts, because they have contracts with, like their Xeon processors and their servers and things like that. And it's like, okay, what happens when the state has a vested interest in something that is supposed to be competitive? Is all of a sudden now you've stabilized and disrupted the market. And I would say, as much as people love Bitcoin should be in a competitive market against currencies, not with the state having a vested interest in some of the currencies. And to me, that's socialist, because
the Federal
weakens
Reserve,
Ethereum, that weakens new synthetic commodity currencies in their ability to compete because one is backed in part by partial ownership by the state.
Right. Well, is the Federal Reserve socialist if we're using the definition of government control and intervention? They exert a lot of control over it, by my understanding. And like I said, I'm not.
Yeah, they might not be in the white pages, but it's certainly fucking socialist. Yeah.
You want me to close?
Well, no, I was gonna let y'all go. You got one more minute on this, and then we'll go to closings.
Well,
you got like 4 minutes each, and then we go audience.
I mean, I'm ready to go into closings.
All right.
Honestly,
yeah,
unless
sure.
you have something else you wanted to add. We went through most of the points. I can go first.
Yeah, you
sure.
are going to the next. So you got.
Well, just because it's all fresh in my mind, I need to get this.
You got 4 minutes.
But we're talking about whether Trump is the most socialist. I would say he's the most anti-socialist president. And our conversation, we agreed that socialism is a public ownership of the means of production, but also what we focused more on was government control and intervention. We had a lot of different conversations about that. I would say Obama's Affordable Care Act, most socialist legislation, Trump opposes that. He wants to pull that down. He weakened unions. He deregulated. He wants to shut down the Department of Education. He shut down USAID. He ended electric vehicle subsidies. He's pro-crypto. He wanted to give veterans access to private health care outside of just the VA restrictions. He defunded green energy. He left the Paris Climate Accord. He's done a lot of things that I would say are anti-socialist, and we didn't really get a ton of things that other presidents have done that are anti-socialist. So a lot of these presidents have done things that are socialist, but if we're talking about who's the most socialist, I say he's the least socialist in our generation. And that's because he's done a lot of things that a socialist wouldn't have done and that other presidents did do. So in my view, at least, when we're talking about the government control and intervention, I find Trump to be the least interested. He's criticized for favoring billionaires, which I think comes from his preference that the private market handle a lot of these different industries. So and this would be a cheap shot, but I looked up on Grok before we did this debate, and I just said, this is just for the chat, this is just for the meme, for the W. I just said, list the top 5 presidents, or list the last 5 presidents from most socialist to least socialist. And I mean, just that basic prompt put Trump at the bottom of the list. So I think right. Yeah. W Grok, right?
I use Grok too.
So I mean, I'd be curious why that's wrong, why the AI gets that wrong. I would want to know if socialist economists who look at Trump would be like, oh, I hate him on this, whatever other policy, but on economics, he's great because we're pro-socialist. I don't see that the pro-socialist people are big fans of Trump's policy. So I just find it I just don't find it compelling, the argument that he's the most socialist president of our lifetime. Sorry for the ramble. But this is
it's your closing. You got 2 minutes still.
Yeah, I cede my time to my delightful opponent.
All right, fantastic. Thank you for that. All right, go ahead, Fabian, whenever you're. Well, no, not yet. Now go, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, so, I would say that I absolutely agree with you that Trump has engaged in a lot of, quote unquote anti-socialist legislation, deregulation, getting rid of certain subsidies, et cetera. And, I would argue again that there is a difference in the value system of his form of socialism versus, Zoran Mondani, right? Like I get that they don't agree on, nationalizing grocery stores and things of that nature. Well, I don't know. Maybe they do. Give Trump another 6 months. Maybe he'll come around. He does love nationalizing industries. But nevertheless, I think it's a difference of values. I do think that Trump has come in and has changed. It has been a force of change, whether or not, whether or not that's for better or worse. When it comes to the ACA, hopefully we can gut the ACA. I have very little faith that we will ever gut the ACA. I think that he gives a lot of lip service towards conservative values because he sees that they're popular on Twitter. But when we look at what he actually achieves, what he actually accomplishes, what he actually does,
no pressure. People are staring at you now.
Right? You mean mugging me in the camera, dog?
Yeah.
Right.
Hey, it's your closing. Fuck you. We ain't got time for your bullshit.
No, let him have it. I got
It's been
plenty
too
of time.
long. People come to audience
Yeah.
of your mad now.
Right. So I mean, like the getting rid of the EV subsidies, I think is a complicated thing, just because Elon Musk, for example, was begging to get rid of those, and yet he thought getting rid of those would somehow punish Elon Musk because he doesn't even fucking understand the EV subsidies and doesn't understand that they were designed for like entering the market, not Teslas, which have been in the market for so long. Again, the major things that I would point to where I would say, like, despite some of those anti-socialist policies, despite deregulation, despite the fact that he has gotten rid of things that left-wing socialists very much value, like being a part of the Paris Climate Accords and things of that nature, is that he is engaged in activity that there also isn't a corollary of from previous presidents, which is the nationalization of industry, which is specific export taxes, such as on NVIDIA and AMD, making it illegal for them to trade AI cards, which they were already kind of getting through the black market, to China, such as getting 10% of Intel, such as, utilizing the power of the state with the Nippon and the USA Steel merger to then have America have voting shares on that. Like, we are talking about kind of that traditional definition of socialism, right? Where the state owns the means of production for the benefit of the working class. That's like that full-blown traditional socialism. But when we get into the regulation of like all of these other things, I do think that it comes down to impact. And that is, to be fair to your point, difficult to measure. What is going to be the impact of tariffs in 10 years? What is going to be the impact of $5 trillion in PPP loans and COVID policy and Operation Warp Speed and the CHIPS Act compared to cash for clunkers and, emission standards and all of these other policies? I don't think anybody really knows the answer. I don't have a magic wand to predict the future of what each policy in a complicated economy is. But I think that command and control aspect is really showcasing a tilt towards socialism, but towards his kind of populist center-right version of socialism. And to me, the evidence shows that he is the most socialist president in our lifetime.
All right. Thank you so much. All right, cool. Chat. So, chat, if you want y'all's questions online answered, you have to spend some money. I'm not going to just read random chat questions. You have to spend super chat money, and I'll read them. As for the rest of us, that's the benefit of coming to a live event. If you have questions in the audience, we're going to go to our panelists here, and we're going to ask them the questions that you have. So, who in the audience has a question? Anybody? Everybody? Who? Yeah, come on. Yeah.
So just saying it, anything the state does is socialism?
Yeah, so his question is for the audience, you can't hear anything the state does is socialism.
I feel like I should just be like Hans Hermann Hoppe and bite the bullet and just
That's
say
what I'm
yes.
saying. No, that's exactly what
Yes,
I want.
exactly. If the state is actively engaged in in manipulating the market in any means or ways, because they're going to fix the market somehow. Yeah, I consider that socialism.
Well, the question is that ever just? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. But is that ever justified to you? Because like
from
he's
an
kind of right when we're
ANCAP
talking about a lot of these
perspective,
things. I don't know that I necessarily don't support all of these things just because they're labeled socialist. I feel like it's kind of like an appeal to me because it's like I generally, if you ask me if I like socialism, I say no. I find myself pretty anti-socialist, but there are going to be times I think where, like I say, I'm not a pure capitalist.
I think the biggest thing to understand about socialism, as far as it is an ideology, right? Not per se like my definition from a libertarian perspective, is that many people, especially on the left, try and hide what socialism is, so that they can say, oh, that's not real socialism, or so that, actually it requires, the state taking it. But if you read Engels' Socialism, Scientific and Utopic, then what you understand is, which is I think the clearest kind of like writing of it. You could read Marx, but Marx is a fucking nightmare because it's all contradictory nonsense. But then again, so is Engels, but it's cleaner. What you understand is that it's, as Marx said, the movement of history through time, right? It is that dialectic process. And so what is socialism is what increases, increases the power imbalance between the capitalist class and the worker. And so when the state, for example, Marx was pro-nationalism, despite the fact that he was avidly anti-nationalist in Poland and Ireland, because in that regard, it gave more power to the people to fight the capitalist class. And so when governments are saying capitalism has failed in this regard, and we need government to step in because of the inherent, they don't use this term, but it's essentially what they mean, the inherent contradictions of capitalism, that's fucking socialism. That's what that is.
All right. Well,
I have a question.
all right. Yeah, go for your question. Don't worry, we got time for questions. So no rush.
You're talking about
All right, what's your question?
you're talking about right-wing socialism.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna.
That's an oxymoron.
I disagree.
So the question
agree.
is right wing socialism an oxymoron?
Well,
agree.
did you have a follow-up question? Or like, that's a statement. I don't want to interrupt you. I'm sorry. What's your question?
How do you justify it? So if I'm looking at the political spectrum, I'm
Mhm.
looking at it as a square. There's
Right.
libertarian and there's libertarian.
Mhm.
So a libertarian would be just as far from me as somebody on the left wing. Like we're opposed. So
I mean, limited government, like that is inherently like anti-socialist, right?
So what I would say, it depends on how you define right wing, right?
Well, right wing, I would say, is small government, right?
You're saying-
We're the small government guys.
You were pro-prohibition a couple hours ago. Mr.
Base?
I don't know how libertarian you are.
Base?
Oh, I thought you said I'm pretty libertarian. My bad. Okay.
Oh, yeah, same.
So so if we're looking at it on an economic scale,
Mhm.
there's socialism and there's capitalism. How are you saying there's right wing socialists? That doesn't make sense. That's not
Where are
it
they?
makes perfect sense.
Where are they though?
Like, I mean,
socialist implies that you're on the left wing. That's the left side.
I disagree, right? So
That's that side.
it depends on what you mean by right wing, right? Like originally right wing just meant that you were pro monarchy, right? Like that's what right wing means. You sat on the right side, that you were pro the monarchy, right? Like, well,
Do you think
no,
MAGA's
it's
pro-monarchy?
important. Well, no, that's the problem is that like we have a like a colloquialism about what is right wing, and what we're really describing when we say right wing are the people that stand based off of certain values. And
Well, one of those values
hold
would be
on.
limited government, right? We're the limited government side on the
I
right, and
disagree.
then the pro-government
I disagree.
intervention
What I
side
would
is the
say,
left.
what I would say, what defines
We're not talking about economically. We're talking about capitalism versus socialism. This is an economic scale.
what I would.
I don't care about libertarian versus the
Okay, but I'm
I
making
don't care
I'm
about
making.
the amount of
Okay, but you're
authority
just
you have.
interrupting to say that you don't care about what I'm saying.
How can you say there's capitalist socialists? That doesn't make sense.
But I did not saying there's a capitalist socialist. I'm saying there's a right wing socialist.
Right wing is usually applied to capitalism and authoritarianism.
Yeah, that is what it has been in
Well, that's not
recent
true.
history in
To
some degree.
extent,
No, let me-
top corner-
Can I answer your
Oh, yeah,
question,
hold on,
brother?
yeah.
I would love to answer your question.
Oh, everybody's so angry. I got this. I'll mod. Don't
Yeah,
worry.
no.
Calm down.
I just like
Who's
let
Rob?
me make the argument, right? I believe that right wing is a set of values that we associate and with a certain segment of the population. And those values, I would say, are best laid out in a video that I think everybody should watch, which is the Distributist did the 9 values of.
Tell me about a video I gotta watch. I'm asking you.
I'm there's an audience. I'm just saying, check out this video as well. Regardless, what I would say is like order-based politics. I would say that like the belief in the corruptive influence of the state. I would say that the belief in successive generations.
Right wing. How can you be a right wing socialist? That doesn't.
Well, let me bridge that because I'll press you with that.
I keep trying to
I
answer,
wanna-
and then you just keep saying that doesn't
Hey,
make sense.
let me-
and then repeating it.
Let me defend your point.
Hold on, everybody.
Let me try to defend your point. I'm going to try to defend the point you're making.
You talk.
So he said how do you define right wing? And you said right wing can be defined as rejecting this oppressive state, not wanting to grant that much power to the
Well,
state.
no,
And when we
that's not what
defined
I said.
socialism, we defined it as increased government control or intervention in industry. So it is kind of at odds if you're saying the right wing is someone who's less favorable to government.
The corruptive influences, like the iron law of oligarchy, right? Like there is a belief from like leftism, especially when you look at like Marcuse and things like that, that we're like at the end of history, that liberal democracy is the quintessential perfect means of governance, because the more we democratize things, the closer we get towards this majority opinion that leads towards stability. And conservatives tend to look at things and recognize that power corrupts, and that when you centralize power and authority, that power becomes corruptive. And so because of that belief, there many times conservatives have been like, well, let's limit that power. I do agree that limited power would be anti-socialist, but I don't think that it stems from, I don't think the conservative value is the limiting of power, right? Or otherwise Christian nationalists wouldn't be conservative. Because
Zachary Jelpy donated $20
So
super
what I would
chat
say is
to
that
a libertarian. Any kind of state is statist ideals.
our
So why would we take them
grid
seriously, saying, gee, that the right is
institutions of corruptive
socialist?
influence,
To
right?
libertarian who are
authoritarianism,
anarchists, everyone that
power,
isn't them a
but
socialist.
that doesn't make it anti-socialist, right? I think there are a lot of values that don't pertain to capitalism per se. I just don't think capitalism is a right-wing value.
So the chat wants to know, we got Zachary Gelfrey for $20. To a libertarian, any kind of statist ideal. So why would we take them seriously, saying, gee, that the right is socialist? To libertarian who are anarchists, everyone that isn't them are socialists. Would you agree with that statement?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of view almost all of you that aren't anarchists, you're just statists, right? You're just attempting to justify evil positions. Nevertheless, I'm preaching, since it was bad that I brought up videos, I'll bring up another one from Liquid Zulu, right? About the celebritarian, right? I'm preaching to the remnant. I'm not fucking preaching to 95% of you, because you're never going to agree with me. I'm speaking truth, and there's 5% of you who will listen.
Let's go. We got average debate. George got a question. We got another question in the back as well. Let's go to Tyler first. We'll go to you.
Also, I appreciate the support.
Okay.
I'm not answering this man's question. I
repeat the
refuse
question.
to engage with this. I'm just.
All right, so this is for.
Is this question a $7,000 super chat?
No,
Okay.
The check cleared, so Israel thinks I won that debate. All right, so my question's for Fabian Liberty here. I was watching this debate, and early on it seemed like you were taking the tactic of isolating maybe the worst offenses of the Trump administration to say that they were pushing the limits of what you were defining as socialism within the debate. But then toward the end of it, you brought up several other things, and when you were talking about other presidents, it seemed like you were almost making an amalgam, kind of coming to more of an average based off of several of their policies. Which one, I guess the first part of this question is, which one were you kind of using more, do you think, to frame your argument? The worst case scenarios, or more of an average score of the presidents?
I mean, I think both matter, right? I think when we look at, there are certain policies that are such as nationalization of industry, export taxes to bully companies, that are those are almost steps towards socialism. And the reason I think that's such a negative and such an important thing is what happens when Democrats do that? What happens when the Democrat gets in 2028? JD Vance, for whatever reason, he gains so much weight that the memes become true and he doesn't become president, right? When we have a Democrat in charge and then they go, yeah, well, I'll use the power of the state, nationalize industry, and then I'll just tell them what they can and can't do based upon my left-wing values. I think that is probably more significant and probably a bigger part of the argument. But I also think it's fair to get into the weeds of what regulations and what are their impact, and especially when it's when every president has increased spending, except for that 1-2 year period of Clinton where he had a balanced budget. You know what I mean? Then it's kind of fair to be okay, well, let's talk about that. Let's expand that. What is the impact of that? Because I do think that also has an impact going forward.
Well, we also kind of spoke to this, because I was asking you earlier about the intent of the president, or the volume of I could grant actually that there's more socialist spending occurring today than there was 5 years ago.
I think
than there was
both
5 years
matter.
before.
I think it's a hard question.
If that's true, do you think the next president, no matter who it is going to be more socialist in volume than Trump, regardless of their intent? Because ultimately it comes down to the effect of the policies, and a lot of the policies don't change that quickly.
I I can't predict the future, right? Like maybe we have an economic
Right, but
collapse
I'm
and
just saying
somebody
the
like
direction we're headed.
Malay comes in.
Fair
I don't
enough.
fucking know.
Part of the second part of the question.
But if we have a status quo, if we have
Yeah.
a status quo, to answer your question, I know you're trying to get, if we have a status quo, right? And for whatever reason, Trump stops shaking things up as much and just kind of continues. And then another Democrat comes in and just kind of does the same shit as Biden
Right.
and Obama. Then yeah, I mean, I think we're seeing an escalation, but also the national debt will keep growing and they'll keep increasing budget things. And yeah, I think you could make that argument that it will just get worse and worse and more socialist because we're stealing more and more and more money.
Right.
All right, my second question is from Juiceberg. Hey.
Go ahead, sir.
For the lawyer,
Go ahead,
I can
sir.
only beat one other lawyer in debate, and that's Pisco. I witnessed it. So my question is,
I was there. I helped. No, I'm
Yeah.
just kidding.
I'm not answering this question.
Going from his to what he just said there, the more important thing is to isolate significant factors. Why didn't you bring up Joe Biden's EV mandates that would have effectively banned all gas cars, which is 90% of the cars on the road, within 10 years? And the second part of that is when he's talking about the micro, why didn't you talk about Trump's massive deregulation, especially in his first term? We put through policies like every new regulation had to be coupled with 5 deregulations and push the regulatory oversight down to Congress.
The average
did
debate
that.
enjoyer wasn't average enjoying the debate tonight.
Right?
Shocker. No, I did bring those up. I mentioned
We talked about
I
EV
both of those
subsidies and
actually.
rules. Yeah.
I mentioned.
What, you
I
oughta
refuse to
get-
give
why oughta
dignity
get-
to that question, but I do have one last question I want to ask you. I pretend I'm just one of them now. But when you mentioned, and I just,
What is this? What is this?
We've got a new
I wanna
format,
hear-
boys.
Sneaky.
I want to hear what you think.
Okay.
We got
When
one
you
more
were
question
talking
after
about
that.
tariffs and
I
taxes,
got you.
essentially saying that those are the same thing. People can. Is it fair to say that people can choose whether or not to pay a tariff, but they can't choose whether or not to pay a tax? And I think that's a significant importance here because when we're talking about taxes, we're like, what is the alternative to taxes? Is tariffs.
I mean, you can choose not to buy a product that would be tariffed, right? But what
Yes.
you can't choose is to ignore the impact that it has on the economy, right? So
For those who choose to buy it,
right, but no, because everyone is impacted, right? Like
right?
if a
Everyone who
company-
chooses
hold
to
on.
buy it.
No, if we have inflation, right, or
Sure.
we have companies that are getting hit with tariffs, right?
Right,
So
but do
that-
taraffs affect the domestic
Okay,
producers?
no, no,
That's
no,
the whole
no,
point.
no,
Is
no,
they're
no,
trying to
no,
make
no,
those
no,
more
no,
favorable.
No,
One more question
don't
and then
ask the question and then interrupt my answer, right?
Fair
Right,
enough.
Yeah,
so
1 minute. Answer.
right, I'll be very quick. The thing is like, yeah, you could choose to only buy t-shirts made in America and not buy t-shirts made in China. Therefore, the price of your t-shirts isn't necessarily going up. But the problem is that when those prices increase in one sector of the economy, that has deleterious effects throughout the entire economy. You can't choose that the economic turndown from tariffs meant that you didn't get a raise at your job, even though you still buy American t-shirts. Like the economy is incredibly complex. And so when you start fucking with the price mechanism, you have unintended consequences throughout the entire economy. So yes, you can choose to buy American products and not per se pay the tariff, assuming you do the research to make sure none of the shit that they need to make
Right.
the shit is tariffed, but you can't choose to not be impacted by it.
All right, we got one more question from the audience here, and then we're gonna wrap this up and get ready for the next one.
This is like a history thing. So you had brought up examples of right-wing socialism, which is fascism, I would call it national syndicalism, whatever. Particular terms don't matter for this.
Sure.
You use the example of Germany recovering faster.
Did you say Germany?
What the fuck? Because so Germany doesn't recover from socialism because of it being fascist. It recovers from socialism because it's getting money dumped into it by the West.
So my argument isn't per se that, like, yeah, sure, right? Like there's my argument is this, and this is a broader argument that doesn't necessarily just apply just to Germany, but I do agree that like we pumped in there, right? Like, and it's also obviously true that when we did shock therapy in Poland, it worked really well, and then when we did shitty shock therapy in Russia, it worked really bad, right? I agree that like the way we fund and the way those things recover, is going to be based off of how much money we give and how much aid, how that aid is administered. Just giving people tickets and then them being starving and selling them to oligarchs doesn't really fucking help, right? Et cetera. My argument is that the cultural impact, I think, is more significant, right? Like we're looking at China, for example, and the Chinese birth rate, much the same as the West, is in danger. And part of the problem is you can't just reverse the one child policy and then just think the culture's cool. Like so many people were gaslit by an ideology that is anti-family and anti-order-based politics and anti the continuation of their culture. And so when communism comes in, I think it tends to be not only economically devastating, but I also think it tends to be devastating to the culture and to pro-social values in a way that fascism, obviously, like certain elements of like, Ein Volk isn't fucking good for the culture, but I think that it tends to be less destructive to the culture.
I lied. There's one more question. I just got paid for it privately. They want to know. This is their question. Shout out DJ Boss, best DJ in all of San Antonio. Is Trump a reptilian? And if so, which race?
What?
Hey, they paid me money. I got to ask. So, yes.
No, of course not. How dare you?
I
He's
personally
my
think
guy.
I don't actually think he's reptilian. I think he's amphibian. That's a whole different.
Stealing everything from us.
Whole different.
I don't know, but I would say that Biden, maybe is a blue tongue skink. I'll give it that.
Nice. All right. Well,
Always
that
looking at
is
ice
going to
cream.
be bringing us into this debate. Thank you all so much, Fabian Liberty, Pentuple. It was good. We had MAGA versus the. We are about to go live in a second with, I believe it's going to be Rob Noor versus Tom Foolery here in a moment. I have to piss like a two-pecker billy goat on crack. So if someone's in there, I'm kicking in that fucking door.
Check out Pentuple TV, MAGA headquarters on Kick.
I saw Andrew walk in there. Listen, he's a big man, but I'm about to be a bigger one because I'm gonna piss on somebody. If I don't get
Fabian Liberty.
Don't shotgun 3 beers.
Fabian Liberty on YouTube.
Yeah, follow Fabian Liberty. Follow Pentuple TV on Kick, YouTube, Twitch, all that. It's good stuff. It's good stuff. We have one more. Like I said, I don't know what their topic is. Does anybody know what Rob's topic is?
I don't know what it is.
It's gonna be something good.
Rob,
Yeah. I know y'all like Rob, so it'll be good. We have Rob versus Tom Foolery. Is Tom Foolery here?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
All right.
Fantastic. That'll be up in a minute. I'm sorry, I'm bullshitting until this bathroom opens. Anyway, it's been good. Hopefully, y'all thought that was a good debate. Can I get some 1s and 2s in chat? 1s for Fabian, 2s for Pentuple. Who won that? Sorry, guys. Also, thanks to people. Oh, yes. And the wonderful secondary head of MAGA headquarters just came in clutch right now. Listen, guys, I want y'all to know something. Here's a piece of advice you can take home. My dad had told me when I was real young. He was like, son, you're not too pretty and you're not too funny. You better learn to dance. So all y'all, if you can't get laid, it's because you can't dance. That's the fucking bottom line. There's your red pill fucking take of the night.
All right.
All right. We're going to be live right there. Brief moment.